Says he wants to make room for ordinary people.
We are ordinary people. Last I checked. Although there was this year there are more people. It's like
Oh,
we're
sure,
closer to a normal
sure.
year, and like all the freshman legislators are like,
We're not
wow.
We're not used to this.
Because it was like FFA day
Right.
last week, and it was like
Noisy up and down.
Oh yeah, yeah. And you gotta squeeze in and. I know you're proud of not catching COVID yet, but I have no idea how I haven't. Knock on wood.
Yeah, no kidding. It's gotten so quiet. Well, I'm still trying to bring my electronic version up here, but why don't we go ahead and get started? It is 6 o'clock, so let's call the Johnston City Council work session number 22-03 to order. Cindy, roll call, please.
Councilmember Cope,
Here.
Evans,
Here.
Martin,
Here.
Reddy,
Here.
Burkhart.
Here.
First item on the agenda this evening is to discuss proposed amendments to the Ignite Recreation Complex and Johnson Gateway Park PUD. Ordinance number 1062.
Last fall, the City Council approved the Ignite Recreation Complex at Johnston Gateway Park planned unit development. And at the time, we noted amendments to the PUD would be necessary to address signage issues, and that we would address those amendments at the time of site plan approval. Ignite has recently submitted a site plan, which is under staff review.
Sorry, can you switch on that microphone, please?
Thank you, Suresh.
Hopefully that's better. I didn't notice. Ignite has recently submitted a site plan, which is currently under staff review, with plans to present to the Planning Commission this next Monday, and thereafter to the City Council for consideration on February 22nd, and that would be 2 weeks from tonight. In advance of those meetings, staff wanted to get the requested sign amendments in front of you tonight for your initial thoughts and some direction. There are 4 requested amendments related to signage. I'm going to summarize each request before questions. The first 2 I'm going to talk about regard the allowed size of building signage. Of course, a building sign is exactly what it sounds like, a sign mounted to a building. When calculating allowed size of building signage, our code stipulates the sign area of building signs shall not exceed 5% of the total square footage of any wall area of the principal building facing a public street. And according to code, the east wall of the Ignite Gymnasium and the south wall of the field house are not parallel to a public street, and they would not be used toward calculating the allowed sign area. Only the south walls of the gym would be counted as street frontage and the east wall of the field house building. When the PUD was written, Ignite requested to allow 5% of the south and east wall area of both the gym and field house, whether those buildings sides faced public street or not. And that is the current language that's found in the PUD. At this time, Ignite is asking for consideration of 2 amendments related to building signage. The first is to increase the percentage of wall area to be applied toward wall signage from 5% to 10% of the south and east wall areas of both the gym and field house. And the second request is to allow an additional 3% of total square footage of both the south and east wall areas of both buildings for signage dedicated to future naming rights. Now that was a lot of verbiage. Before we go into questions, I think I'm just going to go ahead and summarize the rest of the request, and then we'll circle back and I can answer any of your questions. The third signage amendment requested by Ignite is to allow electronic message center ribbon signs with free-flowing text and imagery. These ribbon signs are shown on architectural renderings that were submitted with the site plan, which show the ribbon signs at the north and south building entrances. And the signs would be affixed to the exterior wall of the building in the same manner as a building sign. And the first request to increase area for wall signage is made in part to accommodate these ribbon signs, electronic ribbon signs. And a few items to note with regard to this request. Our current code does allow electronic message centers, but only on monument signs and not on a building sign. Another item of note is the south entrance message center will not be viewable from the public right-of-way, as there are plans to construct a second building that will block this signage once that building is constructed. In the north entrance message center is a substantial distance away from the Merle Hay Road right-of-way, and will also likely be blocked from view due to construction of a proposed building on the Quick Lube property, which has been acquired by Ignite. The last request regarding signage is in regard to electronic message centers on monument signs. And the Code of Ordinances does allow electronic message centers on monument signs, but states the displayed message may change no more than once per 5-minute period. And Ignite has requested electronic message center displays may change no more than once per 30-second period in lieu of 5 minutes. In the opinion of staff, those first 3 requests would be appropriate to address through amendments to the PUD. And with regard to the 4th request regarding electronic message centers, it might be more appropriate to address that through an amendment to the Code of Ordinances that would impact all monument signs in Johnston. I did perform a quick and dirty survey of some other Des Moines area suburbs to determine how they are treating the issue. And Ankeny's code states a message center may change no more than once per 7 seconds. The West Des Moines code limits electronic message centers to time and temperature displays only, and limits a message to changing no more than once per 8 seconds. The Grimes code states signs with flashing or moving lights are not permitted. I couldn't find a code section in the Grimes code that addressed how often that copy could change. And Urbandale's code limits electronic message centers to interstate-oriented retail businesses by special use permit, and requires a message to be extinguished for 1 full second before a new message appears, and each message must remain lit a minimum of 5 seconds. In light of that comparison, I feel that an amendment to our Code of Ordinances to allow a message to change every 30 seconds would still be fairly conservative. With regard to those first 3 PUD amendment requests, in my opinion, they fit the definition of a minor PUD amendment because they do not represent a change of use or density. And according to the code, a minor PUD amendment can be processed by resolution instead of ordinance. Of course, the council could choose to require that those amendments be processed by ordinance, in which case it would require 3 readings of the ordinance and a public hearing. I do think it's very much in the applicant's desire. It's very much their desire to process those amendments on the shorter timeline by resolution instead of ordinance. So tonight I'm looking for council input and discussion on each of those requests, and for your direction on how you'd like for me to process the PUD amendments, be that by resolution or by ordinance. I did include with my staff report a draft resolution to address the 3 amendments to the PUD that I could present to the council with the site plan in 2 weeks. I also included a draft ordinance to amend our Code of Ordinances regarding electronic message centers. The ordinance amendment for message centers would, of course, proceed on its own timeline, separate from the Ignite site plan approval. And that would require, again, 3 readings of the ordinance and a public hearing. I went through that rather quickly. If you'd like to circle back and ask any questions on the requests, I can work to answer those now. Otherwise, we do have in the audience with us tonight representatives from Ignite, Chad O'Meara, and Scott Snyder with Simonson Associates. I don't know if anybody else snuck in the room since. Nope, those 2 gentlemen are here if you should have questions for them.
Quickly, Aaron, quick question here. So you say this signage is on the south side, right, of the construction area, or is that?
Cindy, it might be best to pull it. I thought we might get a lot of questions about directions here, and I didn't include a.
So what I mean, south side is close to the highway, facing the highway.
I'm going to step away from the microphone here for a second, but this would be the south side of the field house. This is the south side of the gymnasium. This is the east side of the gymnasium, and this is the east side of the field house. And so as our code determined it, and I know I'm going to get this wrong, David, we determined that this side has street frontage and this side, but not these two sides. Again, because there's another lot in front of the Ignite property, which means it doesn't have the Merle Hay Road frontage there. So really, it would just be these two, according to our code, these two wall areas that would apply toward the signage. However, when we wrote the PUD, we said each wall area shall apply toward calculating the building signage. That's 5% of the total wall area of each of those sides. That's what's in the PUD currently, and the request is to up that to 10%. And the second request, an additional 3% for future naming rights.
Aaron, talk to me about the marquee sign that's on the north.
The
North
message center.
North entrance.
Okay, let's, Cindy, if you can, there should be a graphic in my staff report or one of the attachments that shows those.
I guess my point is, I saw the graphic that's in the package, but I thought I heard you say something about it's quite a distance from residential area and there'd be a building in between.
Well, what I said was it's quite a distance from the Merle Hay Road. With the flashing and moving signs, we don't want it to be a distraction to traffic. And so this one will be a significant distance from the Merle Hay Road right of way. It won't be a distraction to traffic. In addition, there's going to be another building constructed between the Ignite building and there's currently a quick lube property there today.
I'm talking about directly north though.
You're concerned about the residents.
I am concerned about the residents that are to the north and to the west and having any flashing lights there. I can understand the need. Frankly, most of the signage stuff doesn't bother me except for that one.
Where is it on the, I mean, I see this one, this is on the south side. So in the elevations that we have, the ribbon, there's a ribbon sign that's on the south side, right? That's demonstrated. Is there, the north side is on the exact opposite side? On page 5 of the memo.
So the south side ribbon sign, I believe, will be, gosh, help me out here, Scott, is it at this location or this location? Here? Yes. Yeah, I shouldn't be touching the screen so much, but the south side ribbon sign would be here. The north side ribbon sign would be up in this area here.
Cindy, do you mind bringing up page 5 of the memo? That appears to give that north.
Which memo, council member?
Color rendering.
It's the amendments, it's signage amendments.pdf that was part of the packet. CC_WS. There we go.
That's the one.
And so there I've put in red there, indicated where the north ribbon sign would be placed.
So I guess what I'm trying to figure, which residents do you think would see?
Well, I didn't realize that the actual field house building is blocking the residential area. If you look at how the directly north is the smaller portion of that box rectangle shape, and the homeowners it's blocked. If you look in the plan, you could see it.
The homeowners are to the north and west, and there are some trees that are.
Well, but that building actually will do most of the blocking.
As well, yes.
Okay, so does that mean, okay.
Yeah, now I don't have any concern.
Is there somewhere on the memo though that identifies the monument sign desired location?
There will be, send you back to the site plan if you would, that I don't know that it's shown on this drawing here, but there will be a monument sign roughly in this area, adjacent to Merle Hay Road, and another monument sign, I believe, down in this area here, adjacent to the future loop drive.
Aaron, if we do the first 3 items through PUD, it would limit those changes, the flexibility that's provided in those changes to just this PUD, correct?
Yes, just this property.
Right, so if we were to go through ordinance, it would make it available to anyone in the community.
Well, when I say the difference between resolution and ordinance, I'm saying we could amend the PUD either affecting just this property, either by resolution or by ordinance.
Okay.
And so I'm suggesting, this is a request that's coming from Ignite only. I do think, they've got a unique circumstance here. The use in this structure, the uses aren't static. McDonald's is McDonald's every day of the week. There's different events in this building every day. And so there is need for changeable copy. There's need for increased signage, that kind of thing.
And I agree, and that was the point that I was gonna make. I think that we do, whatever we do, whether it's through ordinance or PUD, it should be limited to this facility because of the uniqueness of this facility.
Yeah, that's, as I look at this draft ordinance, so it's the document that's entitled Signed Ordinance Amendment PDF. So then and you open it up and it's got 4 sections in it and it amends. So section 2 amends chapter 170.09E1.
And so that is the ordinance amendment that would impact all electronic message centers on monument signs in Johnston.
Yeah, and so and I'm not sure I would go there. To me, this monument, this ribbon sign is kind of unique in the sense it's not, you don't see traffic on Merle Hay isn't seeing it. I mean, it's more isolated. And so to me, I would be more comfortable making this, the ribbon sign and and I guess they requested change every 5 seconds, is that right?
Not for the ribbon signs. Now, the ribbon signs that are on the building, those would be continuous free-flowing text. Now, of course, those aren't viewable from the public right-of-way.
Right.
The monument signs, which would be adjacent to the public right-of-way, that would change once every 30 seconds.
Okay, that's what your question was about, where the monument signs came from.
Exactly.
Okay.
Which would be visible from Merle Hay.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So so does this ordinance that you have here that amends that 170, does that just apply to the monument signs?
170 applies to monument signs only,
Okay.
and that would impact all monument signs in the city of Johnston.
So right now, the draft, so you're deleting a section and replacing it with something that says not more than once every 30-second period.
The real change is really just the 30, it used to be 5 minutes, and now it would be 30 seconds.
Okay.
That's the only change.
Okay, I
Yeah.
was just trying to,
I took out the whole section for,
no, that's cool. I was just,
but yeah.
I'm just tracking a little slower, so. Okay, but that would apply to all monument signs throughout the city?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the
But
resolution,
this would not apply to the ribbon signs that are
Correct.
attached to the building?
correct. Those are covered by the resolution that I supplied,
Okay,
which would amend the PUD impacting this property only.
okay.
Aaron, I have a couple more questions for you. I just want to understand the math. They are asking for, instead of the allowed 5%, which was written in the PUD, to have 10% of the surface area plus another 3% for a total of 13% of all sides of the building, correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Including the west side of the building?
The west side would
Okay.
not be, right, no, it wouldn't be used to calculate the sign area percentage.
All right. Following in the vein of Councilmember Martin's questions, the elevations that were provided in the memo, or I don't know if I really would call it a memo at this point, but do depict north elevation and west elevation to have sign and signage. Do we know, would those be illuminated? In other words, those 2 elevations, I believe, would be visible by the neighbors to the north and the west. And while it wouldn't be a changed sign, it would be illuminated?
I believe it will be illuminated. Scott, is that correct? And maybe this might be a good time to call you up.
Okay.
But I don't believe there was any signage on the west end of the field house, am I right?
There is, yes. Do we,
You're allowed to distribute that wall area from the calculation on any side of the
Certainly.
building. Yeah, you can only use those certain walls to determine the area, but you can distribute it on any wall.
and I realize we're making exceptions all the way around here by counting more walls than another business. Do we have anything in the PUD that currently states that those lights or the illumination of those signs, excuse me, would have to be off during certain operating hours or non-operating
There
hours?
is nothing in the PUD currently that regulates that. Certainly, that's another amendment you could suggest. And it sounds like maybe the direction you're going is the north and west side signs would be shut off at a certain time. Is
Yes,
that where you're going?
yes.
And that's an amendment that you could make as well. It would just, if that's the direction you want to take and that's the consensus of the council, I could write that into the resolution to amend the PUD.
Aaron, I'm thinking a lot related to that. Aren't there other establishments in that area where they do have lighted signs at night that would be visible from the residences?
Now, I'm not certain about Child Serve. I know the strip center, there's 2 strip centers north of this property that I think all the signage on those buildings are on the east side of the buildings. They are lighted, but they're on the east side of the building facing Merle Hay Road and not facing toward the residential area.
There aren't any on Child Serve?
That I'm not certain.
Yeah.
Does anybody here, anybody know about Child Serve signage?
There is a south-facing sign, but it wouldn't be visible from those residences.
When I think about it, I want to say they have a monument sign adjacent to the right-of-way. There might be some building signage as well.
Which sign are you concerned about being eliminated?
The the north elevation shield, as I'm going to call it, and then the west elevation ignite. They are on page 7 of that same document that ends with signage space amendments.pd.
Go ahead and come on up. Yeah.
The field house building, we just envision those, we don't envision those being internally lit signs. They'd be more spotlighted at night.
Okay,
The building, the primary gym building would be, you know, more of the traditional sign that would be on the building. In fact, we've just got done talking to the building manufacturer of that fabric building, and they can either screen print that right on the fabric or separate. So that signage.
okay. That's good to know.
And that would be for the north too?
For the north, south, and west. I just want to clarify too, the 10% is only on the field house building, not the gymnasium building. So we're just asking for more signage on the field house.
Tell me, because I haven't summed it up, and maybe it is summed up somewhere, right now, based on the PUD, give me square footage, what's allowed, total square footage.
For the PUD, that's that, the number, the
First page of the staff report does have that info.
yeah. Aaron and I both ran the numbers. We came up with the same numbers.
So do I see 2,316? Is that,
Yes.
is that the
would be
number
for
I'm?
the 10% of the field house building.
That's currently 5%.
That's where we're asking for the increase, that number. Not on the primary building, the gymnasium building is all within code of the 5%. And then is that?
So I want to make sure I'm understanding, and maybe I'm getting more in the weeds than is necessary on this, but you currently have in the PUD 5% of both what we're calling the gym and the field house. You're asking for a 10% variance for the field house only. And then you're asking for 3% extra on both the gymnasium and the field house.
Correct.
And currently, based on the elevations, designs, renderings that we have in front of us, are you at the 10% right now? You're using every single, okay,
What you're seeing is what we're asking.
okay.
With the exception of the 3% additional.
Okay, thank you.
So quickly following up on his question, the size increases. How bright is the crowd lights that goes on that?
How bright?
Yes,
It'd be,
I'm curious to know because the brightness, if you increase the size, the brightness probably increases. Is that a distraction to the road traffic up there?
if I have a lumen number or anything, I mean, it would be.
Yeah, that might be a good thing to look at. It just don't want to be a distraction on the road traffic, Marley Road or on the highway. So it might be something to look at. Thank you.
Any other questions for Aaron or the developer?
I might, it's not so much a question. Could you go back to the plan view, Cindy? I guess I'm pretty much in favor of the lights and the signage and the illuminations that's being described here as they face the south and the east. But I am not really in favor of the field house, the big shield medallion on the north side being illuminated. And actually I'm not much in favor of it on the west side either, although it faces out into all those playing fields. There's something to be said for being out on those trails and feeling like you're out on those trails. And I guess I don't understand why that north side of the field house needs to be as illuminated as you have it. What I would ask is that the ribbon sign make sure that cannot be visible from those houses off to the north and the west, that it's tucked, that the building, the way it's tucked in, that it gets blocked. And that'll give everybody from those parking lots, they'll know where the doorway is with that ribbon signage. But the big shield sign on the field house that faces north and then is then spotlit. I'm not sure, I understand having your signage up there, absolutely. But I'm not sure I want this, I'm assuming it's a white background. I mean, there's a lot of square foot of building there, that light will reflect out, it's gonna catch your eye. I'm not sure that I'm gonna be happy with that. So those are my concerns. Thank you.
Yeah, what I don't know, I think the hard part for me is I don't see how somebody from the north and west is gonna see that sign. So if you presented some material or evidence showing that it's gonna be illuminated at whatever it's gonna be illuminated, and that the possibility of somebody, because they live, I don't know, quite a ways away, there's trees, all that stuff, that's not gonna be, if you had evidence to show that they're not gonna be disrupted by that sign, then I would not have a problem with that north sign being illuminated, because it faces right into the parking lot, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm open, I would be open if you came back and provided more information, but if it's not that big a deal to you and you don't wanna go to the time and effort of proving that out, but if you came back and said, hey, we just, here's our evidence that shows that somebody who lives to the north and west is not gonna see those lights, I would certainly be open. I don't have a problem with that north or I think the west is the concern about the trail impact. I mean, I don't think the north really impacts the trail, the west, I could be differential to that. I'm not lighting, but I'm not lighting that because of the trail part of it. But to me, I love the logo thing. I think that logo looks really sharp. I think that's really cool. The shield thing, I think that's really neat. So
I guess, Councilman Cope, I'm looking at the plan and I'm thinking about the signage that's on the west. And if there's night games and everything,
right,
who cares, right?
right.
But if there's no night games and all the lights are off and you're on a nice evening walk And then you've got that. I mean, I could be talked into it, but it's not my favorite thing either on the west side.
I think it's reasonable to look at those things and manage the north for sure. The west a little bit because the games and stuff, and so
Yeah.
maybe there's some hours that can be put around it so that when there are people back there, that there's already going to be some lighting and stuff.
Yeah, right.
Reasonable discussion for sure.
Thank you.
The south and the east.
My final thoughts really coincide with the conversations that are being had. You somewhat convinced me that we could potentially adjust this through a PUD amendment at some point anyway of hours of illumination. The fact is that they're not going to be internally illuminated or back illuminated. In other words, we wouldn't have to be able to set anything tonight on that discussion, or work toward that. That's as, I hope anyway, as easy as turning on and off a light if we decide to have them illuminated at all and what those hours are. So I appreciate you kind of being forthcoming, not only in what you're thinking and how you're thinking of trying to manufacture that signage. I think that's important. My only concern at this point is, I realize this is a unique property. I realize we're taking some major risks and have already throughout this process. I'm not convinced we necessarily need to totally overhaul and change all of our signage code for this one entity. I'm in favor of expanding to the 10% for that field house. I think it's a very large structure. I think that would be nice to be able to have that labeled as such. Frankly, my recommendation would be, we're granting you some sort of extension, well beyond it, counting multiple sides and surfaces for square footage. We'd be giving you that 10% on that larger structure. Perhaps make that work to find out if you need to have naming rights or something included in that as well. I'm at this point, I don't think we'll probably see a decrease or a discount in our contribution to Ignite when you sign off on naming rights somewhere. And in fact, I might propose that we get first dibs at naming rights based on the yearly amount we're already contracted to be able to pay to you instead. So I'm not trying to run your business, but at the same point in time, I certainly understand that we're already making some pretty hefty exceptions there.
If it's named after the city of Johnston, they're not going to want to pay property taxes on it. I'm not going to support that, so.
Well, they're not
Just
paying
kind of
much
having
for a
fun with
while.
it. We did offer the roof because we wanted the roof too, and you said no, so we said city of Johnston could have the roof, but then everybody can see it.
Thank you for offering the roof. So noted.
So is the council comfortable with what's being proposed here, with the understanding that we're going to address in some way the issues around the north and the west signs and the lighting of those? Set to,
And you're also comfortable with processing this as a minor PUD amendment? I
Yes.
think I have the direction I need. Thank you.
thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, the Newport Vista Storm Sewer and Trail Project.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm assuming we'll have a display momentarily. Not quite sure who's all familiar with the Newport Vista Stormwater Improvement Project, which was
Newgate?
and then west of Peckham. There was some existing flooding concerns and issues that have happened due to large rain events where water has overtopped the existing pond, come down the channel, hit where the trail crosses, ponded up, and then went close to a house, didn't go into a house, but has caused numerous landscape issues. And it was this pulled up right here. So just north of Fullerton Court, water has eroded a bunch of landscaping rock and some other issues with it. Significant amounts of money. So that precipitated a stormwater project where we were going to reconfigure some storm sewer through some overland flowage, create some more overflow controls to ensure that water appropriately and safely goes around the household and the landscaping rather than just continuing down its path. Then when we went and did a field review, that is when we noticed that the existing trail all the way from Peckham back over to Newgate by the trail, by the pond, was in disarray. It has large cracking, alligator cracking of the existing asphalt trail. So we then split the project into divisions to be able to track funds, one for the stormwater improvements, which needed to replace a section of the trail, and then Division 2, which will replace the existing asphalt trail across the limits of this project. And with that, I'll go to John to discuss the funding of Division 2.
Yep. Good evening. So when we did the walkthrough, obviously, we've been aware that this trail is going to need some work. We actually have it scheduled out about 3 or 4 years that we were going to start doing it in chunks as maintenance projects. But since this stormwater project came up, we figure as long as we're in the area, we're going to be disturbing a pretty lengthy stretch of the trail. If it was possible, we wanted to go ahead and replace the entire stretch. So back, I believe, early December, I started having the conversations with Teresa to find out, is there any funding sources that would allow us to do this? Total price, I believe, is about $290,000. Between the Merle Hay Trail project, which is complete, and the Pioneer Parkway Trail project that is complete, we had over about $380,000 left in those funds that can cover the total cost of this project. She felt on the financial component that the money that we borrowed for those projects is legal to use for another trail project. And since this project was moving forward, this is a good way of using some of those funds up that were already allocated for trail projects. So the funding is there, the timing is right. We felt like it was best to do the project all as one instead of piecing it together over the course of a few years.
Council have any questions?
So is it kind of what's depicted there and kind of how much of the trail is going to be removed?
Correct, the entire stretch that's depicted there.
And it'll be
Concrete.
It'll be a concrete trail. Is that kind of our
Yes.
approach now? Is it?
Especially in town, concrete trails just hold up better than asphalt trails.
They're
And,
harder on the knees, but
yeah, and honestly, the prices now, with asphalt prices going up,
Yeah,
they're
they
about,
make a lot
they're
of
comparable
sense.
now.
And then they just have a much longer life. Okay.
John, I was going to put you on the spot. If you had learned, however, and I know this is tough at this point, you're advocating for this project, but if you had learned there were $300,000 sitting unused for trails, where would you have wanted to spend that money?
It would have had to be directed towards another trail project. So,
I understand, yes, but what trail project it was at the top of your list? before
honestly,
that?
if we didn't use it this direction, we would try to probably moved it forward towards the Ignite project with the series of trails that are going to be running in that site.
Is doing this trail going to at all delay or encumber us so that we can't do the rest of that trail?
No, we already have the process with the CIP already has those trails within the scope of additional work for the
Wonderful.
future.
Thank you.
any concerns about what's being proposed here? Seeing none?
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, John.
Moving on to the next item, to discuss funding requests and initiatives for the FY23 budget. Jim, is that you?
Yes. When we had our budget work session in January, we had 4 items that were brought up as potential funding either at that meeting or there's been, some requests after that. A couple of these are related to more regional type projects and a couple of them are more Johnston centric. So the 4 items we have are the Des Moines International Airport, the climate action initiatives, the Mid-Iowa Planning Alliance for Community Development, and then the Historic Preservation Commission. So we have done some work since the meeting to put information together. Actually, council members were involved in putting some additional information into these items. And so we'll start with the Des Moines International Airport this evening. I think as a council is aware, the airport is planning to do a new terminal project, and they've gone out to all the communities in central Iowa and around the region to ask for funding to help participate in the new terminal project. Part of what they're asking is the local communities to provide funding so they can go to the state of Iowa and try to get additional funding for this project, up to $300 million of federal and state funding. So they've gone out and asked communities to participate, and the request for Johnston was $30 per capita for a total of $677,460. And so we had the airport authority come out in December to talk with us about the project and share that information with us. In the information that I provided for the council this evening, there was an update of what communities have already committed towards the funding of the airport. And some of that is not necessarily commitments at this point, but letters of intent and various ways of expressing their interest in participating in this project. Since the time that I shared that information with the council for the agenda, we've learned that Pleasant Hill has now committed up to $100,000 for this project. So I know that Councilmember Cope did a lot of work on this, and he took on the opportunity to put together a memo that was shared with the council in the council packet to provide a proposal for funding the airport. And I guess I'll go ahead and let Councilmember Cope talk about what his proposal is.
I think I'll defer to the mayor, because I think,
Yeah, well, I built off of yours. You got
what's
it.
that?
I used yours as the starting point and then worked from that.
Yeah, but I would defer. I think I would just defer to you. I support the approach that you've circulated to the council, and I'm good with that. So.
Well, again, I took a look at what Councilman Cope had presented to us. I thought he had some good ideas there. Following that, went out and asked Cindy to obtain the agreements or the letters of agreements or the resolutions from all of the communities. And she worked with me to prepare these two charts that you have. Not only did we look at what the other communities have done with respect to the airport authority request, but we also took a look back at what we had done in prior years with respect to requests from the Iowa Event Center as well as Sec Taylor. If you take a look at what the other communities have done, it was really interesting to see that you recall that the airport authority did present kind of a template agreement to us for our consideration. Only two of the communities have followed that template and basically inserted their information along the lines of what the airport authority had requested at the per capita level that the airport authority had requested, and signed the agreement and sent it back to the airport. Others took, different approaches. Ankeny used that general template, but they extended the number of years to 6, and they also built in a number of other conditions. At that point, the community seemed to take a shift, and they diverged from the letter of agreement, signing any kind of an agreement at this point, and they adopted resolutions. And you can see that Windsor Heights, West Des Moines, Waukee, Clive, those all look very similar. What I found interesting in those agreements is West Des Moines was the first one to not respond with the amount that the airport authority had requested. They actually rounded it off. Rather than $2,036,970, they said that they would be willing to commit $2 million. Again, going down the list, there was they varied a little bit in terms of the starting date and the end date, the term of years. Altoona, most of them would start their payments in FY23, but Altoona proposed FY24. Again, working through the list, it got real interesting when we got down to Polk County and Des Moines, because not only did they not take the agreement approach, but their resolutions were a little softer in terms of, an immediate commitment. And they built, Des Moines in particular, built in much stronger conditions, including that they wanted to be, in fact, part of the process of the review of the design and the construction schedule, the financing. But they also made it very clearly contingent on the airport authority receiving $300 million in state and federal funding. Pleasant Hill was also another one then, and they are the most recent one that we received. They are also a community that, rather than responding with the amount that the airport authority requested, and the airport authority had requested them to contribute at $30 per capita, they took the approach that they should only contribute at $10 per capita. And so what they have said that they would be willing to provide is about a third of what the airport authority had requested. Again, if you take a look at what we've done in the past with the Iowa Event Center and Sec Taylor Stadium, some things to note there. Both of those agreements actually took the form of a 28E agreement. It wasn't just, something that someone drafted and said, we're going to commit to a certain amount of dollars over a certain number of years. It was an actual 28E agreement that was filed with the Secretary of State's office and filed with the Polk County Recorder's office. They also, in both of those instances, the contribution was made over the term of whatever the bond term was to finance the project. So in the case of the event center, it was 10 years. In the case of Sec Taylor Stadium, it was the last 14 years of a 20-year bond. And then you can see, I thought there was some really good language in the Iowa Event Center 28E agreement around what the city's obligation or opportunity would be if, as the project progressed, if certain, not deadlines, but can't think of the word that I'm looking for, but if certain things didn't happen when they should have happened in terms of the
Benchmarks?
benchmarks, there we go, benchmarks
Milestones.
weren't met. For the construction, the city had the opportunity to back out of it altogether or say that we weren't going to make payments until substantial progress had been made, which I thought provided a lot of protection to the city. So again, building off of what Tom Cope had prepared and borrowing from what I thought were some pretty good ideas that the other cities and the county had presented in their resolutions and what we had done in the past. What we have before you is an approach that would, again, like Des Moines, it would say that we would express support for the terminal project and an intent to provide funding. The amount would be $20 per capita. And again, when you look at what the airport authority had proposed, they proposed levels of 10, 30, and 50. And they lumped a lot of communities in that $30 category that are pretty diverse in terms of the population and their opportunity to grow. So what is being proposed here is kind of creating another category, and that is the kind of the in-between category, $20 rather than $30 per capita. Giving us some opportunity to again see some final detailed plans, design, cost of estimates, construction schedules, financing. Term would be tied to whatever that bonding term is. We don't know what that is, but probably no less than 10 years. Anticipated first payment, again, because there's a lot of unknowns at this point, it's very unlikely that they're going to begin construction in the next fiscal year. So proposing that we make our first payment in FY 2024 using hotel motel tax revenues to make these payments. That's what we did in both the case of the Iowa Event Center as well as Sec Taylor. The thought there is that in the future, we might get another hotel or two, and we might have some additional revenues that we could dedicate to this purpose and not put ourselves in a situation where we would be using property tax dollars that, someone might be able to argue that there's always plenty of property, or you could increase your property tax dollars to make these payments, but rather using hotel motel tax revenues as that dedicated source. And memorializing it in the form of a 28E agreement. So it's something that's more formal. I've asked whether or not that is the only way we can commit city revenues for a project that is outside of our jurisdiction to pay for a project over a term of years. I don't have an answer yet on that, but because that was what was done in the other two instances, my guess is that's probably what needs to be done here. The conditions upon which we would commit $451,000, again, borrowing from Des Moines, only if the airport authority gets a commitment from the state and federal government to contribute $300 million. It would be subject to our participation in the advisory committee that they would be developing. The third paragraph there is, again, language that comes right out of the condition that we had in the Iowa Events Center in terms of meeting those benchmarks and giving us some opportunity to not make payment or even void the agreement altogether if certain progress isn't being made. And then finally, again, borrowing from the Iowa Events Center agreement, giving us an ability to see their files and records for purposes of auditing and examination. So that is what I would propose as kind of the best of the best in terms of responding to the airport authority's request.
Mayor, I will say that you did a great job with this, the way you broke it out, and it was quite thoughtful. And it seems reasonable. I do believe that a world-class airport would be a great advantage to Des Moines. I know people that actually look at what kind of airport is nearby and where they travel to before people that are looking at job prospects in the state actually do pay attention to what air service there is. So I think it seems reasonable to me.
Other thoughts?
The only thought I would have, as we look at funding it out of hotel motel tax, would be, so you're looking at an annual amount of
If it's 10 years, it'd be $45,000.
$45,000.
Yeah.
So I'd like for that to be the lowest priority in the hotel motel tax, so that if we're running short in hotel motel tax, that it be, that means we only get 35,000, that we're not cutting the trail fund or some other part of hotel motel tax. So I'd like it to, and that doesn't have to be part of the 2080 agreement, but that's just sort of to me. But we may have to account for some, that if we aren't able to make the full payment because of, as we know, hotel motel revenues can go up and down. I think we're going to be in good shape with hotels being built in the city over the next 3 to 5 years. But just, I think, to give that protection so that we're not, so that we don't have to cut into other funding sources.
And I share that concern. The only thought I have there, Councilman Cope, is that the airport authority might want to know with certainty what that amount is going to be, so that when they go out to bond for whatever additional financing they need for the airport, they know exactly what they need to ask for.
Right. So how would we handle if in essence, that'd be my only concern is if we make a commitment that's 45,000, and thus if we have a shortage, are we, obviously we have the ability to amend our budget, dip into, reserves or something to help make up that, like on the trails or something else. I just want to make sure that we just don't, that those other funding sources don't get hurt, especially the trail funding. I think the trail funding needs to be
And
protected.
Teresa's not here this evening, but
I'm
thought-
listening though, Mayor. Excuse me for interrupting. Sorry. I may not be there, but
You're here.
I'm here in spirit. And Councilman Cope, when that has happened in the past, the trail funding it wasn't cut short, but we transferred what was needed to be to make the same amount to the trails. We did transfer it from the general fund. So it does come from the general fund, but we didn't short the trail fund.
Okay. As long as we've got a way to do that, that's good, so.
That's what we've done in the past.
And we could use loss too, couldn't we, Teresa?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
For recreation purposes, we can.
And then the only, I think there was a statement in the Des Moines resolution just sort of voicing their support for the project, which I think is, I think consistent with kind of Councilperson Martin's comments about that we do believe that having a first-class airport is helpful and is a benefit to the metro. And
I thought we would just use their statement expressing support for construction of that.
Sure.
I'm not ashamed to plagiarize where there's good language available. Councilman Reddy, your thoughts?
I'm thinking out a little bit here, but I like the idea of that, what Doug Martin said about first-class airports and things like that, but I would like to have seen this expand a bit more about international. It says international airport, doesn't it? But we don't get any international flights here. It's just domestic. I think I asked that question to that person the other day when he came by. I did not get any reply back to him, but it could be nice to see if we could get some international flights up here. That could be useful. And the way this set up, the whole funding is really good. If we had more international flights come in, that would be excellent. So that's something that we should talk to them about. Make sure that we get some of those things. That'll be really useful. We have some good international companies here. Corteva is it's an international destination, so we should probably get that thing happening. So that's my only thought here. But otherwise, I like what you put up. Thanks.
Councilman Evans, you indicated your support.
Thank you for the opportunity. First thank you, Councilmember Cope and Mayor Deerenfeld for your efforts on this. I was very in support of the $10 per capita amount. I'm going to continue to chew on this $20 amount just a little bit further because it is in essence doubling where I kind of was positioned before that. The rest of the structure that you have proposed, especially based on precedent, is amazing. I support all of that in that capacity. I don't want us to get into a point where we have to make those decisions. I realize we kind of have some rainy day, so to speak, to make up that difference. My understanding when Mr. Foley came forward asking for Johnston support, it was moreover an act of support. I have no hesitation in that whatsoever. I feel like we need to be a good player in the metro and support our fellow metro communities to come together to have that world-class airport. So to that end, I think we can do so. I think we could have done so and could do so at $10 per capita and not ever have to worry about that. But that's something I can internally try to wrestle with as to where we go further. So I just thank you very much. This is very enlightening.
Well, I think going forward, what we need to do is take what you see in the proposal, create a resolution that we would bring back to the council then at the next council meeting.
And then the resolution, then you would have a 2080 agreement would come out after the resolution? Or
The 2080 agreement would come out after,
after they met the conditions?
yeah,
Okay. So and we're expressing our intent,
exactly.
but we don't execute on that until.
In the same way that the city of Des Moines has done that.
Great, thank you.
And it might, I don't know if the resolution should signify that, but the process, but I think that's good, so.
What's that?
I don't know if the resolution signify that would be how it would work, that we're expressing our intent, and if they meet then we would enter into a 2080 agreement.
Yeah, I think there's a way that you can make it clear that things have to happen before we would enter into an agreement. Okay, I think we've covered that one.
We have 3 other items.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, thank you, that's good.
We have 3 other items. I know it's almost 7 o'clock. If you want to break and do our council meeting, we can certainly bring those up at the end of the council meeting.
Yeah, I think we probably need to do that. So why don't we adjourn the work session, take a couple of minute break, and we'll come into the regular session.